Our coverage begins with Charles Swift, who is a retired Navy JAG attorney and currently a law partner at Swift and McDonald PS in Seattle. Charles, thank you for being here. And our understanding is, because we have been in contact with the authorities all day long, Khalid Sheikh Mohammed has released two pieces of information: a 36-page manifesto that just appeared on the Huffington Post, as well as a TV station in England. And he has also taken up a pen pal in England to whom he wrote a 25-page letter in handwritten, and then it was retyped by someone. Our information tonight is that the manifesto was released in a court proceeding down at Gitmo by a judge, essentially, who declassified KSM's writings, and that his pen pal, his letter to this guy, some home health care worker, some kid in England, was mailed from Gitmo without the knowledge even of his attorneys. I ask you, sir, as somebody who has defended some of these terrorists at Gitmo, successfully, I should point out, winning a big Supreme Court decision you did, how can it be that KSM is allowed to communicate with the world and continue from a jail cell spreading his propaganda?
Well, Ms. Kelly, first of all, thank you for having me. To answer the manifesto one first, it's exactly that. It went through a court proceeding. At times, Mr. KSM has represented himself, and he files things, that's why he has a laptop, with the court. Those documents, unless they contain classified information, are public information.
All right, but let me stop you there just so we can walk the viewers through it. Because it was the policy, we confirmed with DOD, it was the policy that high-value detainees like KSM, at one point, were not allowed any communication with friends, family, you know, if they have friends, with anybody, because this is the worst terrorist we have in custody in the world. We don't want him talking to people. But then our understanding is a year ago, a judge at Gitmo, Colonel James Pohl, ruled that KSM's communications as a high-value detainee would not be top secret any longer. And therefore, this manifesto that was circulated within the court was therefore no longer classified, and somebody released it. And it's very interesting, Charles, that they released it to two left-leaning media outlets. Now, I know you have represented these terrorists at Gitmo, but that suggests to the average person that this is an attempt by somebody involved in that court proceeding to shape the view of Gitmo and perhaps even of KSM.
Well, I would doubt that would be Colonel Poe. He's the presiding judge for the military commissions, and he's been so for 4.5 years. What he did was he applied the law and to the communications.
Who would leak it? I don't know. I don't know if we call it a leak because it's not classified according to the judge now.
I would disagree that it was leaked. It's part of the courtroom records. I could get it. You could get it if you wanted it. Write to the commissions and ask for these publications or their
All right, got it. So let me ask you this.
I don't get that it's leaked. They just asked for it and got it.
Fair point. Let me ask you this. Do you think we should be letting that man's communications, a 35-page manifesto, and by the way, oh joy, it's one of 3. There are 2 more coming. And the next one is why 9/11 happened and was justified in his view. That we should be allowing those rantings to be circulated around the world?
I think if you're going to have an open trial, you don't have a choice.
That's
the
nonsense.
military commissions
That's
have
nonsense.
faced...
Of course he could classify it. The judge could have kept it classified.
Not if he applies the law. There's nothing in it that's classified.
Oh, come on.
No.
So national security, oh, well, it's no big deal. Don't worry about it.
Well, you have to apply the law on what is classified. Sheikh Khalid Mohammed's words aren't classified. The law as to what's classified is U.S. information, not Khalid Sheikh Mohammed's.
So it does. So he could
now,
be. So if his manifesto has specific messages to people who want to unleash hell on this country, as they've already done, I might point out for the record, and he's included that in this manifesto that's now available online. And by the way, our competitors over at CNN are discussing it in detail. That's fine by you?
No, but that's not going to happen. Because before it was released, it had to go through military intelligence authorities for exactly those purposes. And you can't at one point say the military should do this trial and then say the military is incompetent to judge what is classified, to judge whether or not the information contained in this has a secret message. They're either competent or they're not. And in this case, I have absolute belief that they are competent. This is not unprecedented.
If they're
this happened at
competent,
Nuremberg.
let me shift gears with you, because I apologize for my tone, but I'm worried. I'm concerned. I don't, my next guest is coming up, and he's going to talk about how he believes there are secret messages in here that may be the prelude to an attack. So I don't understand.
If you're concerned, I have a great suggestion. Move him to federal court, where things will be a lot more limited.
And you feel
You
that,
have to understand
that a
the
protective order
environment
there
you're
can
in.
protect us from messages from somebody like this?
Well, what you have here is a judge who applied the law as he saw it.
All right,
You
but let me
can't
shift
ask
with you
a
before
judge
I
to
go to
do
Andy
more.
McCarthy. Let me shift with you before I go to Andy McCarthy. The pen pal message to this kid in England, that's okay too? He can write from his jail cell to whomever he wants, anybody?
Well, during my time there, yes, was the answer, that you could write. Now, again, all of that went through military censors. And I would point out something.
Okay.
The prosecution's not particularly upset, because in these same documents, they're getting their case. No more problems with waterboarding. No more problems with the parts. Khalid Sheikh Mohammed's confessing. And he's confessing in these manifestos. From the prosecutor's standpoint, they're quite happy tonight.
Okay. Well, thank you for being here. We appreciate it. And I want to bring in Andy McCarthy now, who used to prosecute terrorists for a living. He's a former federal prosecutor and a contributing editor for the National Review. He was the lead prosecutor in the '93 World Trade Center bombing and helped launch the 9/11 investigation. Andy, am I off base?
No, not at all. In fact, this business about he's confessing, we don't need his confession. The whole point of shifting our paradigm after 9/11 from law enforcement to counterterrorism was a recognition that these characters were not just mere criminal defendants who are presumed innocent. They are enemies of the United States. Can you imagine, Megan, that during the Second World War we would allow imprisoned German or Japanese operatives to get their propaganda out of an American prison? Is preposterous.
No, I cannot imagine. And I understand now. So now we learned tonight that as for the pen pal message that KSM sends out to some healthcare worker in England, it was mailed from Gitmo without defense attorney's knowledge. They didn't know about it. Who did? We don't know who would have allowed this, but they say that everyone at Gitmo has access to normal mail. He's allowed now to communicate, Andy, as long as his correspondent is vetted by a security team. So now we're allowing this guy to write letters to anybody who wants to release a 3-part manifesto. The Huffington Post headline on this, hopefully we can put it on the board. The Huffington Post headline is Mastermind of September 11th attacks wants to convert his captors. And you can see here it says Mastermind, wants to convert his captors, and they talk about how he's now basically changed his tune. And you say they've got it totally wrong.
Yeah, of course they do. They are, to answer Mr. Swift, they are totally incompetent. They don't understand Islamic supremacist ideology. No one in this government has bothered to get a grip on that for 20 years now running. If you're a jihadist, you're supposed to invite the infidel to convert to Islam before you conduct jihadist attacks. We have a mile-long trail of people like bin Laden and Zawahiri, the current head of al-Qaeda, doing just that sort of thing. So this is a guy who's getting his messages out, who's getting his propaganda out, who's getting his ideology out, and the 3 blind mice at the switch don't have a clue of what it is that he's trying to do. And what we hear from Mr. Swift is, well, let's not worry, they're perfectly competent. And by the way, if this was happening in federal court, we wouldn't have this sort of thing. Well, the last time when we had people in federal court, we had the guy I prosecuted, the blind sheikh. Bin Laden credited him with issuing the fatwa that approved the 9/11 attacks from his American prison cell. Saeed Nosser, the guy who killed Meyer Kahane in 1990, plotted the 1993 World Trade Center attack from his prison cell in Attica. And we had the 1993 World Trade Center bombers corresponding with jihadists in Madrid who were implicated in 9/11 and the Madrid attacks there. So don't start telling me how competent these guys are who are watching what goes out of these institutions.
And now we're hearing that the lawyers, as far as KSM and his pen pal, that the lawyers may have at least seen the letter. And let me just put on the board, okay, because this is from one of the lawyers who is a member of the armed services. He's a Major Derek Petit. And this is what he writes about his client, KSM, the man who beheaded Danny Pearl, who beheaded him personally and killed 3,000 Americans through 9/11. I believe Mr. Muhammad, a term of respect he applies to him, was touched by Mr. Green's letter, because the home health care worker in England wrote him first, and wanted to respond to share his own faith. It will surprise some to see this respectful dialogue between two humans. I'm not sure who he means. Obviously, the home health care worker is one of them. I don't know who the other human is he refers to, who are concerned about each other's souls, Andy. This is the mentality.
Yeah, it's touching. I'm sure he'd like to touch him.
I don't know.
Look, you can either fight a war and try to defeat the enemy, or you can consider the enemy to be criminal defendants, assume that they're innocent, just like your average bank robber, and decide that their due process rights and their human rights to communicate with anyone on earth are more important than prosecuting a war to victory. And if that's the decision you make as a body politic, that's fine, but you shouldn't expect to win many wars, and you should expect to suffer a lot of terrorist attacks.
Well, we're not going to repeat what KSM said in this program. We are not going to be a platform for that man's rantings. Andy McCarthy, thank you for being here.
Thanks, Megan.